All right, good morning, guys. This is gonna be a little bit different than what the videos I've been making. I'm gonna go back to the Cptsd. I don't know how to let this start. I got out of bed because I woke up from a dream and it it was a it was a strange dream. It was one of those dreams that normally you would want to wake up from, but I stayed in it on purpose because it was therapeutic. I realized, maybe not at the time while I was in the dream, but conscious. I don't know. It did, I guess, because I chose to stay in it. I was staying in my dream on purpose. But yeah. I don't know if you guys know, but there's this UFC fighter, Sean Strickland. I don't watch UFC anymore. I don't, watch any of that stuff. These things come up across my feed, and, your brain picks up on everything. And then, of course, what we're attracted to. And, with CPTSD and PTSD and just being sensitive now in general, and you're attracted to, it's those types of things. You pick up on those types of things. Well, I guess, he's been on these different podcasts talking about his childhood abuse. Not that I've watched any of them, just, I've seen where he's broken down and opened up and, about his abuse. And so it was me and him and both of our wives, were sort of in and out of there, and yeah, man, we were partying down and but the whole focus was on the vulnerability of me and him as we got drunker, just opening up and talking about our abuse and finding that connection there, and so much came up out of it, man. So much just came up out of it. And I guess I'll just start this video with just knowing how far I've come and how these videos have helped me. Been, extremely therapeutic for me to be able to, to get these things out because they've never been accepted. I've been called crazy. I've been called, and I tried talking to my mom. She would gaslight me, back before I even knew what gaslighting was, over 10 years ago, 15 years ago, in my 20s and 30s. And she would always, be one up on me. She'd have one up on me and always be ahead of me by 2 steps, with me looking for closure or anything out of it. And, but just realizing, because the last time I tried talking to her about it, she, I took her alone and she could see how serious I was. I was like, Mom, I got something serious I need to talk to you about. And I said, it's about the abuse you did to me when I was young. And, I could tell now looking back, that she felt cornered because I had her in her house, all alone, and it just in a vulnerable place. And she had to defend herself. She couldn't come to terms with anything, and it was such a vulnerable spot. And she saw how real I was, because I'm just such a real person. I've always been an extremely real, honest person. Because of the autism ADHD combination, and then, just having the childhood that I did, and then always having that shame and guilt placed on me, and, being told that I was going to hell, for things that I, over half the time for things I didn't even do, and, having to admit to things I didn't do, and, So I just, from a young age, with everybody, I just kept everything on the table. I tried not to play too many games because I realized, that there was always somebody better than you at playing games, and the best policy was honesty, or whatever that looked like in a drunken state for 25 years. And um so I had my mom in a very vulnerable spot, and this was probably about the fourth time in my life, in my adult life, that I tried to confront her about this abuse. And she just she had to double down, and she'd look me right in the eyes, and the only thing she said to me was, "Oh, Richard, we both had our um we both had our issues, or we both were played a part," or something like that, and then she said, "I don't want to talk about it," and she walked away. And that's, I could feel my heartbreak at that moment, because I realized she was never going to give me closure on it. Um, and I ended up cutting her off shortly after that, because it just went right back into the games and ruining my life and being passive aggressive and manipulating and lying and, playing games between people and all that. So that's when I cut her off. But so it's an energy transference, CPTSD, PTSD. I'm seeing, with coming from a place of complete humanity and what it means to be human, and being so empathic, and what we call sensitive. I mean, my oldest son and my daughter, the middle child, were highly abused by their mother, and then of course by me, and um you know passively by me, but outrightly by their mother. And thankfully my youngest son didn't have to go through that abuse, but it still doesn't matter, because I realized why he turned out so sensitive, because my oldest son and my daughter, had to build these real strong walls, and then I had these huge strong walls. So we all had these huge strong walls built up of just hurt people, traumatized people, highly abused people that couldn't talk about it. And so I think, that makes sense. I see how the energy transference goes, to these other humans, and then they become sensitive to the point where, my youngest son has seizures, um and so all of this goes down to the weakest link of society, and like the weakest link of our family was Aiden. And so he was the one who physically displays this sensitivity and this abuse that the rest of the family has suffered. Um, and this plays out from the micro to the macro, us as a whole, as society, how, the degenerates, the alcoholics, the drug addicts, the suicidals, the ones who are labeled as crazy, right? The ones in and out of jail, the ones who act out, are all the underbelly of society, the weakest link, the ones who pay for the sins of humanity as a whole, and the sins of humanity are simply the acts of not being human as a human, not doing that which we know to be inherently and innately know to be right. Even though society's taught us it's survival of the fittest, and, all of the evilness and disgusting things that are allowed in this society, in this dog-eat-dog world that, you know, as a human just aren't even close to being acceptable, you know, and most can numb themselves to it, and because their walls are built up and built so strong, and then, you know, it's do whatever you have to do to survive and get what you need and to crush whoever else is around you because everybody else is doing the same thing, and if you don't crush them first, then they're going to crush you, and all of these just terrible, terrible things that these sick, toxic cultures and cultural structures have built into us. And it's all on purpose, you know, it's all to drive us from our humanity, and then the weakest links suffer, and then that drives us from our humanity even more, the majority of us, because then we look at those who suffer and enact out these aggressions and these non-human traits that society as a whole has come to display. And then us as a society on a larger whole separate ourselves even more from society, from being what it means to be human, by, you know, chastising and disciplining and coming down on those who act out even more, so like throwing them in jail for the rest of their lives and throwing them in crazy farms and mocking their abuse and mocking them in general. And instead of, we have a chance when those people display these things for forgiveness and opening arms and, you know, and giving them that humanity and that connection. And instead we cut them off even further, like a cancer, you know. And all it is, a cancer, it's a warning sign to the rest of the body that we're intaking toxins and there's toxicity there that needs to be addressed. And instead, you know, what modern medicine does, instead of addressing that cancer, it just deals with the symptom, you know, and it wants to cut that cancer off and deal with that cancer in a way that's non-conducive to the actual health of the organism itself, which causes, you know, more chemotherapy causes more issues and breaks down the other cells of the body, you know, which us as a whole, as humanity, instead of tending to these weakest links, we, you know, try to cut them off farther away from us and think just because we cut them off and throw them in jail or they commit suicide or whatever, at least out of sight, out of mind, that the problem goes away, but it doesn't. You know, we're not addressing these issues. We're not facing the root causes. We're not, you know, instead of at these vulnerable moments where we have a chance to heal and become whole again and connect with the rest of humanity, we keep on double downing and, you know, doubling down on our positions and building our fortresses even higher and thicker. And now we're where we're at now, you know. And so what's it going to take for humanity to change, man? It's going to take everybody, you know, taking personal responsibility, having discipline, the courage, and being completely honest and open with their stories and their lives and what's happening with them. Because, you know, as long as we keep hiding this abuse and our reactions to it, you know, that make us vulnerable, we're just going to keep perpetuating the abuse. We're going to keep perpetuating this absolute horrid state that we find ourselves in as humanity. And so, you know, this goes back, you know, I think this got triggered because yesterday I did a run to the dump. You know, in Virginia, we have these big transfer stations where we, we have these smaller dumps or transfer stations, where you can go and you separate your cardboard and your metal and your glass, and your regular trash has to be in a nice, pretty bag, and and then it's all separated, and then but when you have like a whole bunch of shit, because I cleaned out the yard yesterday because I finally got my truck running again. That's been a nightmare. I've had both my vehicles down since last week, Wednesday or whatever, and so I took my trash. I took a whole truckload, and I pulled up because there's a gate there and a gatekeeper, and they tell you, okay, well, they see what trash you have, and they say, okay, dump this here, dump that there, dump that there. And, so they told me, I had two different things that need to go in different areas, but they said, okay, the rest of it just dump in the big dumpster down there, the main dumpsters. And, they have 6 of those big green dumpsters that are wide open, and they're, the place you back up to sits high, and then you just dump all your shit out. And then there's 6 of them, and I pulled into like the second bay, I think, and then there was one of the attendants at the very end, so on 4 containers down from me, just sweeping the parking lot or whatever, and I started tossing my trash, and there were a couple other people that pulled in. It was empty when I got there, and there was a couple other people that pulled in, and they were dumping their trash, and then all of a sudden, I'm like 3/4 or more of the way dumping my trash, and I hear the attendant just screaming. I'm just going off. And see, for those of us who have been in these situations that deal with PTSD and Cptsd, back in the day, I used to, feed off those because, I had so much pent up aggression and I wanted to get it out. And as I got older and my head injury stacked up and everything else, I just stayed away from fights more and more because, I didn't recognize exactly what, these brain injuries were, until later on in life, way later on in life. But I guess, subconsciously you pick up on what it is, and you go more towards the fight or the flight stage than the fight stage. So, that's how that works. And so as I got older, I would try to stay out of those situations more, especially right after a head injury. And then as I healed, my courage would come back, and I would fucking, of course, because I had never dealt with my childhood, the source of it, my childhood trauma and abuse, I had that pent-up aggression, and I would want to get it out, which also feeds into my sex addiction and other addictions, my alcoholism and other stuff that I dealt with for years. And just anything to numb yourself and take your mind off, that the horrors that you went through, and the realness of it all. And so, yeah, man, and, so this guy I heard him screaming, but I can't just, now, especially with how sensitive I am and everything, and I don't go out in public, and I just, I had my back turned, actually. No, it's just because I was picking up little shit and just tossing it behind me out the truck. And, I just assumed he was talking to somebody else because the guys at the gate had told me where to dump the other stuff. And then they said the rest just dump in there. So, I had the green light and everything. And I just, again, I hear that screaming voice, shouting voice, cursing voice, going crazy voice, and I just shut down. I'm like, okay, just stay, don't even look, don't even feed that situation energy at all, just stay away from it. And within it happens so fast. I mean, it triggers you really bad, man. But I see also how far I've come with my healing, how differently I reacted, and how I was able to slow everything down. And it's weird, man. But yeah, so before I knew it, he's in the, basically right at the back of my truck with his hands on my truck and screaming at the top of his lungs at me and cursing at me. And I stood up, and, before it was like my eyes would roll to the back of my head and I would turn into this monster, and just react. And I mean, I've hurt people very bad. And as I got older, I hurt myself because I got into these bad situations where, I was rolling blackouts, from drinking, and rolling blackouts from from head injuries and just not healing. And so there was a time in my 30s where I was just rolling these blackouts, and I would find myself, I got myself into some serious trouble. I got my ass beat by these two guys, really bad, and, so, I just being in that situation last night or yesterday, I see how well and how like present and aware I am, because I felt my eyes wanting to roll back in my head, but because I've confronted everything and because I've come so far and because I'm so healed, I was able to remain calm enough, but still, like, I get, it's a combination of my PTSD, my Cptsd, and then just being fully aware now and not wanting to be fucked with, and, and I, not wanting to hurt anybody at the same time, and not, but at the same time, not wanting to be hurt and having to have that, having to stand for myself, but in a new way without fists or, breaking somebody's back or, picking them up by the throat or, not hurting anybody, but not allowing myself to be hurt at the same time. And, so I've realized that, like I said, I was squatting down. Next thing I know, he's screaming as loud as he can right there, had his hands on my truck. And I stood up and I felt my eyes wanting to roll back. And I looked at him, and because what would happen before is I could already picture myself annihilating somebody, and then just acting. And so I felt that come, and I just kept my mouth closed and I was breathing. And this guy was going nuts, man. I mean, he was lost. He had lost it. He completely lost it because I had thrown a tire. I had a trailer tire, a small trailer tire that I had tossed in there, and he was screaming about how, that doesn't go in there, and what the fuck are you doing? I mean, at the top of his lungs, so I mean, screaming, like, because I caught out of the corner of my eye, one of the other guys that was dumping would just like had stopped and was just staring, because the guy was going off. And the more that he yelled, like, so now I'm standing there and I'm in this fight, because you go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. And I felt myself starting to go into freeze mode because I was just standing there in the back of my truck. And I was looking at him, but I was keeping my mouth closed and breathing through my nose. And I felt myself like I was going to blow, like I got this energy, because I could feel the energy transference, he like the energy he was putting on me. And I wasn't ready for it. I mean, this was completely unexpected, and all I could get out, I just yelled back. I said, "Don't you fucking yell at me," and when you do that, like I said, it's like a beast inside you. Like, people get really scared, Like, because I've been in that situation so many times in my life and I've hurt so many people, and, you can just tell. Like, you fuck around with somebody who's been in the shit and isn't afraid to fucking lose their life over something stupid. You can just tell, you know what I mean? And, because it's an energy transference is what I'm seeing. And, so he was like, oh, and then just, started mumbling and everything. And I was just like, I couldn't say anything else to him. I shut up and I went straight back to what I was doing. And then anyways, I got out of there. I came back into town because that dump is like 20 minutes out of town. I came back into town, tried to file a complaint against him, because I realized, that if he had caught me like that 3 years ago, it would have been turned into a very bad situation for him. And then I probably would have ended up in jail. You know what I mean? So I was like, this guy's a county employee. He gets paid out of my taxes. And he literally almost caused an incident over, I had a whole truck full of trash over this small spare trailer tire that I had already been approved to throw everything in there, so I was going down to file a complaint on him. And, so that way there would be a record in case, there's a lot of people out there with PTSD, man. And you flip out like that at the wrong person, and you're gonna cause a bad situation. You know what I mean? Like someone's gonna get hurt very badly. Especially if that person carries or, whatever. But even just a heart attack, someone, an older person can have a heart attack. You know what I mean? And I just felt, I'm not the type of person that files complaints. I take care of complaints right there. But now with where I'm at, and not wanting to deal with these things like that and realizing that's not the answer, I'm like, well, something's got to be done, because if this guy triggers somebody else that has PTSD, Cptsd, that's not as healed as I am, they're going to open up on that guy, and it's going to be the last thing either one of them does, And the town, I went into City Hall, and they were just like, you could tell they didn't want to deal with it. So these sneaky little bitches gave me the card to contact the head guy who supposedly was up there at the time. I emailed him. He emailed me back a email saying that he was there, and now I illegally threw something in the trash dump, and they had a customer come up to stop at the guardhouse and come in as a witness to say that I screamed and cursed at the employee, and that I was illegally dumping, and that they were charging me for illegal dump, and that if I continue that behavior, so it all got turned on me. So then I was dealing with like childhood, like I was like, oh my God, man, like these motherfuckers, like I literally was just trying to tell them, look, I got PTSD and I just want to file a complaint because if this ever happens again, because I doubt this is the first time this guy's ever done this. And if this ever happens again, I want it to be on file that, he has a history of, screaming and acting crazy with people out of the blue. And, and I received that email back. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to, cause he's like, I forward your email to administrators, which the administrators is the office I went to that threw me out or didn't throw me out, but shifted the responsibility and had me contact him. So this is just what you have to deal with. So knowing that your government's all corrupt and just, a bunch of employees pulling paychecks and not doing anything and not doing their jobs. And this all started with an employee who acted unprofessionally over something so ridiculously stupid. And anyway, so that happened yesterday. And what I'm trying to say is that energy transference, because you go into that state, and I mean, it brings up everything. And then you got, your energy gets drained. So I went to bed early last night, and I was just sort of out of it yesterday. And then afterwards. And then, so that energy transference, and I had that dream this morning, and me and this guy, I can't remember, Sean Strickland were like just coming together and just opening up to each other in that dream about our childhood abuse and relating. And like you could feel in that dream, like just the relief of having another manly man there, that had their defenses built up their whole lives. So the thing I want to point out about Sean Strickland, I think the reason his abuse is coming out so blatantly the way it is now is because of head injuries, like mine. It took head injury after head injury after head injury after head injury after head injury in my life and to get older and older and further into these injuries and deeper into my addictions that, for me to be able to come to terms that it was all stemming from my childhood trauma and abuse. And then, to reclaim that sensitivity that I had as a child that got beat out of me. And then, so it's all just coming full circle. And it's a very vulnerable, scary spot to be in. That's why we build up these walls, because nobody wants to be that vulnerable, And so I was choosing to stay in that dream this morning, and until I realized that he had found his relief and I had found mine, and I just didn't want it. Neither one of us really felt like talking about it anymore, And I chose to get up. I chose to roll over, open my eyes, check the time. It was like 5:46 in the morning. And I closed my eyes. I was going to go back to sleep because it really wears you out, and you just want to sleep and I'm laying there with my eyes closed. And well, as soon as I did that, I heard my male cat. So this story keeps on going with the abuse, guys. Because I'm relating this to everything, because it relates to everything. This is how we're all connected, okay? Not only my youngest suffering because of the walls I built initially, but Brandon built, and then Sammy built, and then so all that energy transference went down to my youngest son, Aiden, who, was so open about his sensitivity and doesn't have a problem crying and doesn't have a problem opening up, doesn't have a problem speaking his mind, doesn't have a problem with all these things, you know what I mean? And so that is a result of the community, the environment in which the social caste in which he was born. And then, so when I woke up this morning, when I rolled over, because, I sleep with my blanket up to here on my head, and my cat, I heard my male cat. He was on that top bunk that's behind me that you guys see in my videos. That's, he sleeps up there most nights. And so I pulled the cover down. Like, he can just feel, like he was dead asleep up there, but he can feel like because I toss and turn all night, every night of my life. And he won't get down. He gets down when he knows that I take that cover off my head. So in that split second, he jumps up, and you can hear him jump, and his paw and his body weight hits the ground, and then he comes over. And, so now I'm sitting there with the covers like this over my head, and I looked at the time, and I went to go back to bed. And as I did, I saw him come around the corner right in my face, and I said, oh. And so when I got the blanket over, I could picture like a dog, it's funny, like most people have a dog, and because dogs are so sensitive and, are there for you. They have dogs as, what do they call them? Emotional support pets or whatever they are. People with PTSD and shit now, have their, what are they called? Guide animals, or, I can't remember. There's a name for them, but you see people walk around and they got the, you don't touch their dog. It says, please do not touch a support animal or whatever. And so this brings me to the story of that cat. You know, when my cat gave birth last year, it was him and his brother. And one morning, they had to have been a few weeks old, I would imagine. And one morning, something happened. I don't know if they had gotten out of the closet or whatever, but you know, I was dealing with a lot of my stress, anxiety, plus my brain injury. You know, I was on less than I was probably like 8 months or so into my brain injury, my last brain injury. So your stress levels are extremely high. And it was like, I remember it was like first thing in the morning, and like they had gotten out, so I'm putting them back in, and I grabbed the first one, his brother, and I put him in. And, you know, I picked him up and grabbed him fine, and he just went right in. But see, I had like a lot of fucking anger and just the emotions and the craziness inside of me, like a crazy man. You know, I had to cut myself off. I couldn't even be around people, you know, because I understood the craziness I was dealing with. And so when I went and picked him up, you know, and went to go put him in, he freaked out, and he grabbed onto me and he scratched me and bite me, and you know, so you know, it made me let go because it was so fast. And so then I had him by his neck, you know, because that's how he ended up out of my hand. He had turned around and flopped around and was screaming and clawing the shit out of me. And so I had him by his neck, and I went, and I felt my hand tighten, right? And so all the energy that I had, my hand tightened, but it did not tighten like physically. I kept it so that way I wouldn't hurt him. I would have killed him, you know. But, you know, my hand tightened. I felt all that energy go through my arm of that anger and all that tensity and that anxiety that I had. And it transferred to him. And, you know, ever since then, he had become feral. This was probably at like 3 weeks old. So you can imagine just a tiny kitten, you know, and innocent little kitten. And this is, and so ever since then, he was feral. His brother never had an issue. His brother was fine, you know, and, you know, he was feral ever since then. And that's why he deals with that to this day, you know, still deals with being feral and that unhealed emotion that he has. So again, the energy transference, you know, and then this even goes to, I mean, this runs so deep, all of this energy, you know, because it goes to, he could probably feel, he was probably connected to me with those energies I was giving off while I was sleeping from my dream and just wanted some love, you know, when I pulled that cover down. And then, because he's so attached to me, I mean, so extremely attached to me. And because how I've healed him, I've done videos on how he's healed is through love, through that connection, you know, and through that honest connection. And that's how we heal as a society, you know, is through that connection. And, but at the same time, because society is so rotten and we got to be careful, you know, especially not being healed all the way, we got to be careful because we're still vulnerable and can't open ourselves up to everybody else. So really the only work that can be done of true change is healing ourselves completely, 100%, and facing everything and making sure we've taken care of all of our shit before we can even go out there and put ourselves out there in these vulnerable positions again, because, you know, ultimately we're coming from our ego, that proxy that's been built up behind those gates to represent us, you know, outside of those gates with society. And that ego is a very selfish ego, you know, it's only in things for itself. It's only ultimately doing things for itself. So, you know, trying to go out there and heal other people without being healed ourselves is all virtue signaling. It's all, comes from the ego. And, that's why this journey of healing is so important, because we think we're helping, we think we're doing these things for other people, but we're really doing it to build up our egos and to, to find that relief for ourselves, to that connection for ourselves. So instead of doing it out of love for other people, really we're doing it for ourselves. And, so we got to, that's why the honesty and the personal responsibility and the discipline and the being courageous part is so important, because we can say we love other people all we want, but unless we're taking those steps and doing that inner healing for ourselves, we can't show that true love for anybody else. And they pick up on that. Those other people that we tell them we love them, and we do all these so-called nice, kind things, these virtue signaling things for them, they pick up on the fact that we don't have that 100% connection there, because we have those blockages from our own unhealed, undealt with, abuse and trauma. So they pick up on it. We can lie to ourselves, but we can't lie to other people because of that innate connection we have with everything around us. It picks up on those blockages, and those things are never stated, but they're felt, they're known. And because our society is all about, not talking about these things, we think that, when we get triggered by them, we like, oh man, I feel that. And then we go, oh no, that's not real. Oh no, that's just in my mind. Oh no, that's just my mind playing tricks on me. The other person is picking up on those things too. They're picking up on those energies too. It's just nobody's saying anything. And so that's why it's important we all share and get these things out and deal with these things. That way we can heal ourselves and move on. Because I do believe there's instantaneous healing. I do think that we can heal it, that we can, once we're fully healed, we can heal other people. But, that's never going to come. Until then, if we're just doing these things as virtue signaling egos and acting like we're being there for somebody and being there as a support system for somebody, and yet we're still unhealed and haven't faced our shit, we are just propagating and perpetuating the abuse and trauma, and we're just wallowing in our sorrows and in the muck with these other hurt, abused people. And so that's why it's so important, because we have to cut those links of abuse in our society and in our family structures and in our cultural structures and our social structures. We have to be those strong ones. We have to take responsibility. We have to be disciplined. We have to be courageous, and we got to tell the fucking truth. We need to quit playing games, and that has to start with our own selves. And we have to heal ourselves. And until we heal ourselves, we can do nothing for anybody else. We are part of that cancer. And because us as very sensitive people are so vulnerable, it is important that we take it upon ourselves to do this healing. No matter what society calls us, no matter how crazy they say we are, no matter how, they want to make fun of us and criticize us and ostracize us, we have to be courageous. We have to take personal responsibility for not only ourselves, but for the connection as a whole, because we are at a deep, dark spot as humanity where we're getting ready to be reset again. And, that's a dangerous spot to be in, because that just means this whole cycle is going to start over again. And, that's called insanity, guys. We are innately empathic, sensitive humans that are just perpetuating, propagating our own abuse through the generations. I think I'll stop that there. I just wanted to get that out. Like I said, I just woke up. I rolled out of bed, and my cat did that, and it was just like coming to that understanding of what all's at play here, and how this energy, it's all just energy transference, and how the weakest links in our society are the ones that are paying for society's society's refusal to be human, you know, and they're using all these things like eating animal flesh and the entertainment and the capitalism and the love of money and the, you know, having to do what you have to do to pay your bills. And they're just squeezing us into this choke point right now. And we have one or two options. We double down and we delve even further and sell out to the government, to these governments and these organizations in the matrix that wants to steal our soul, you know, steal our energy and our attention and our individuality and our essence. Or, you know, we come to terms and detach from this place and we reclaim what is ours, you know. And it's a hard thing to do because we're going against all programming, all indoctrination, going against all cultural norms, all society structures. We're breaking out, and it takes the balls of a bull. You know, it takes bigger balls than a brass monkey, man. It's no fucking joke. This is where the rubber meets the road, you know. So I guess this is just an open conversation, you know, and I hope it connects with a lot of people, but you know, everything's just energy transference, guys, and nothing dies. Nothing actually dies. We don't die. This physical body may pass away, but guess what? When it does, it feeds other parasites. Other parasites are feeding off of it while we're here. You know, and then things grow out of that, and it nurtures the next generation of things that grow. And everything's just an energy transference, guys. Our cells, we come from one cell called the zygote, needing nothing outside of itself in order to divide into trillions of other cells and create this, what we call human. And then they've purposefully, you know, taken us from our birthright, from our innate being, from our innate essence, our power, and they've put a wedge in between it and stolen our birthright and sold us a bill of goods that isn't worth the paper it's written on, and we consentingly agree to give up our power every day by continuing to play in these games, you know, and sell ourselves out and sell our children out. And it's up to us to be brave and courageous and do what we have to do, and 100% honesty with ourselves, first of all, and then those around us. And that's how we initiate true change. So I hope this helps. This open, honest conversation helps others. And yeah, guys, you know, take care of yourselves because nobody else will.